So I'm Sarah Buchanan, and I work at Princess Margaret, and I'm a part and available for people who need to be seen by a dietitian at the McCain Center.
And I'm Katie Southgate, and I am currently working at Loblaw Companies Limited, but I've had the previous pleasure of working with Sarah in my former role at Princess Margaret as a dietitian there as well.
So we have no conflicts of interest, and Katie's just going to make a note about some of the food we have here today.
So part of our presentation, we're going to be doing a little bit of a demonstration, and you'll notice on the handouts that you received in your welcome package, as well as some of the products here, that specific brands are shown, but in no way do you need to feel that you need to use those brands. It's more about the foods themselves that we're talking about, and you can substitute the brands that we show for any brands that work best for you or that you talk about with your healthcare team.
So today we're going to talk about food, obviously, and just talk about nutrition and its role in helping someone as they go through their pancreas cancer journey. So we have a little video that we're going to share with you in just a minute, just about the pancreas and its role in digesting food and those major food groups and nutrients. We're going to talk about the importance of getting enough fluid, calories, protein, and how this helps you through your cancer journey. And then we're going to, at the end, just go through, a big part of our conversation is going to be giving you some demonstrations and hands-on suggestions. And then at the end, a small piece about going through some of the other side effect management pieces. So our nutrition foundation. So I'm sure everyone knows, many people know that the way we eat can be affected when we have pancreas cancer, and that can be for a lot of different reasons. It is possible that some people have the same appetite, they're able to eat the same foods, and if they can, that's what we want to promote. We want people to be able to eat well, to drink well, and there's really no special diet that you have to follow. So what we really encourage and what we go over is, number one, making sure people are getting enough fluid and that they're staying hydrated. So depending on your age, your weight, your gender, somewhere between 1.5 liters to 2.5 liters per day. It doesn't have to just be water, but we'll talk about that more in a little bit. For some people, feeling full is a very common side effect, and so smaller, more frequent meals might be more easier to manage and more realistic. So protein is a really, really important part of the diet. So that helps the immune system repair, prevents muscle wasting. If you've had a surgery, it helps with wound repair. So again, there's no types of protein we have to focus on. The important part is that we're getting protein. So things like your chicken, your turkey, fish. If you want to go for plant-based options, things like tofu. If you're not too sensitive with gas and bloating, things like legumes could be an option, so like your chickpeas, your lentils, things like that. In terms of fats, we want to include some fat in the diet because it's a great source of calories. And some of the healthier fats would be things like your nut butter, your avocado, some vegetable oils like olive oil, things like that. And we always say as tolerated because some people do find that they're a bit sensitive to fat in the diet. And then lastly, of course, the carbohydrates that also provide great nutrients and great energy. If you feel like you can tolerate them and you can manage them, so whole grains are a great option. And of course, fruit falls under there as well as dairy products. So we have a quick little video that we want to share with you, and then we'll just briefly recap it at the end.
The role and anatomy of the pancreas. The pancreas is an important organ in the digestive system. It is located in the upper abdomen, directly behind the stomach and next to the small intestine. In most adults, it is between 6 and 10 inches long and 2 inches wide. The pancreas is comprised primarily of a network of tubes or pancreatic ducts that release liquids into the upper portion of the small intestine, called the duodenum. Anatomically, the pancreas is divided into 3 regions: the head, the body, and the tail. The pancreas has 2 functions, endocrine and exocrine. Its endocrine function is to produce the chemicals or hormones that regulate blood sugar, such as insulin. Its exocrine function is to produce enzymes that help to digest food. Pancreatic amylase breaks down carbohydrates or starches into glucose. Proteases break down protein into amino acids, and lipases break down fats. Because these digestive enzymes are so powerful, they are wrapped in a protective layer while they are in the pancreas. To reach the gastrointestinal tract, the digestive enzymes travel through the pancreatic ducts and are eventually released into the duodenum at the major papilla, also known as the ampulla of Vater. Once they are completely out of the pancreas, the protective layer is removed and the enzymes become active. Bile from the gallbladder also enters the duodenum at the major papilla. Bile breaks apart fat into smaller fat droplets, which are easier for lipase to digest. When the pancreas is healthy, it contributes to a healthy digestive system. However, when our pancreas does not function correctly and is unwell, we can have trouble digesting food properly or maintaining our blood sugar in a healthy range. The consequences of an unwell pancreas may include diarrhea, bloating, flatulence, oily and foul-smelling stool, weight loss, malnutrition, poor blood sugar control, and diabetes.
So just to recap, the pancreas has two main functions. So the exocrine, which is the digestive juices it produces and delivers to the small intestine to help break down the fat, and then the endocrine, which is secretes the insulin, which is one of the hormones that helps control blood sugar. So most of our suggestions today and our talk is going to be around adenocarcinoma, which is about 95% of pancreatic tumors. That's not to say that the suggestions we're giving wouldn't be helpful for anyone, and any cancer diagnosis they will be. And just to make note, we're not going to really talk a lot about blood sugar control, but if anyone has any questions about that after, we'll be happy to answer those questions.
So as we saw in the video, when our pancreas is unwell, it can really have a whole host of implications, nutrition-related implications. So what we've gone and done is listed some of the most prevalent nutrition implications here. You may experience loss of appetite, taste changes, and feeling full, for example. Some studies suggest that between 35 and 40% of individuals with pancreatic cancer report early satiety or feeling full earlier than they usually would. And of course, that can be related to the tumor itself pressing on other organs such as your stomach. Gas and bloating is a common complaint, and as well as diarrhea. And all of these different nutrition-related symptoms can, of course, affect your weight status and may result in weight loss. So as we just noted, different side effects can make it difficult for you to eat the same types of foods and in the same amounts that you were previously eating. However, cancer itself may cause you to use or digest your nutrients differently. So you may have difficulty absorbing nutrients if your pancreas is unwell, if you have pancreatic enzyme insufficiency. You may not be breaking down the food like you once were, and your ability to absorb it may be compromised. And as well, when we have cancer, the cancer itself may be producing substances that change the way that we use the food that we are eating and be causing us to break our muscle and fat stores down.
So just to recap our nutrition goals. So if someone is able to eat well, we don't want you to be changing your diet as soon as you have a diagnosis. If you're able to eat and drink well, we encourage and we really want people to continue with that diet, especially if someone's going to be having some surgery or some other type of treatment, whether it's chemotherapy, radiation, a combination of those things. That's not the time to be making lots of drastic changes to your diet. That being said, because as Katie just went through, there's lots of symptoms that can affect how we eat, what we eat, when we eat it. So that's why we want to give the suggestions we're giving today to help manage those things. Also, we know research tells us that people do better when they're able to maintain their nutritional status while they go through their cancer journey. Improved weights, or I should say weight stabilization, strong immune systems, wound healing, as I mentioned before, but also to maintain the dose and treatment schedule that you're on. If someone's losing lots of weight and they're unwell and becoming malnourished, that can impact the treatment if someone is on treatment. So the side effect management, so the tips we're going to give now, we're going to be focusing on high calorie items, high protein items, the small frequent meals as I mentioned before, and then the healthy fats as tolerated. And I just want to add in the fat piece. Sometimes people think that they shouldn't be having a lot of fat. It is as tolerated, and we'll talk a little bit about the enzymes a little bit later.
And we're going to be focusing on are really to help you if you are feeling full too early or that early satiety, if you have low energy or you're feeling tired, if you have a loss of appetite, and of course, as Sarah was noting as well, to help with your weight stabilization. All right, so the fun part. How do we take these suggestions and really turn them into practical meals and snacks? So we have a little comedy diagram sketch strip, yeah. We will not be showcasing any sort of dinosaur meat today. It's very hard to find this time of year, of course, so. All right, let's launch into the first example. We've broken up the different tips and suggestions that we're going to talk about into simple sips and small eats. We're going to be focusing first on the simple sips, and you have these handouts as well in your welcome package, so you're welcome to refer back to them at any time.
So the first one I'm going to chat about is just using a juice. So this is an organic juice. It doesn't have to be an organic juice. It can be any kind of juice you want. You can make your own juices at home if you want. Just keep in mind that if it's not pasteurized, you only want to keep it a day. Try to use it the day that you're going to be making some juices and taking them, maybe a day or two in the fridge. So for this example, Katie's just going to explain the ingredients I'm using, and I'm going to shake it up.
So as Sarah was saying, it's just an organic juice. It's a mango juice. You can choose any type of juice you like. And what she's going to add to it is a whey protein isolate. So it's going to be ramping up the amount of protein in the juice and as well as adding some additional calories. All of the examples we have use the minimal amount of ingredients so that you don't feel like you have to be pulling out a lot out of your fridge or shopping for a large amount of groceries or having a lot of cleanup to do afterwards. So through just taking a cup of the juice and 2 tablespoons of the protein powder, what we've done effectively is take a juice that is about, maybe 150 calories in a cup. And as you can see, we ramped it up to 225 calories and 13 grams of protein. So we've really boosted the nutritional value of the juice. The next example we have here is more of a milky texture. So if you're not able to handle a thicker consistency or a milky type consistency, you can use the juice example. If you are able to handle a more milky consistency, you can try something like this as well. So here I have a cup of the kefir. Kefir, how many of you have ever had or tried kefir? Okay, a couple of us. So kefir is a cultured milk product. And it's somewhere in between a consistency of milk and yogurt. So you'll see here as I'm pouring. Now, because it is cultured, it's very high in probiotics, or those healthy bacteria. If you are on chemotherapy treatment, you just want to check with your healthcare team before taking something that has a lot of healthy bacteria in it. And to it, I'm just adding 2 tablespoons of skim milk powder, which is another protein option as well. If you don't want to use something like the whey protein, you can turn to a skim milk powder as well. I'm going to add it.
And I'll just mention while Katie is shaking this one up that if you don't want to use the kefir, you could use like a yogurt drink. You could make your own high protein milk. So these are just suggestions. And it's nice because all of these fluids count towards your total fluid requirements. It doesn't have to just be the water. So by adding in the protein powder to this one, we've boosted up to about 13 grams of protein for a cup of the beverage.
I should also say too, the shaker cups that we're using, you can really buy these shaker cups anywhere. We also have in this one just the metal whisk ball. It's dishwasher safe, and you can add it to any type of plastic container or bottle that you might have at home. And you can buy these little whisk balls separately as well.
So the last simple sip we have for you today is using something called Carnation Breakfast Essentials. Again, it doesn't have to be this one. It can be any kind of nutritional supplement. On the handout, we have a picture of the blender, but we actually tried mixing it using the metal whisk, and it does blend quite nicely, so you don't need a blender. But what we did is we added to it 2 tablespoons of the cashew butter and mixed it all up. And I believe on its own it's about 10 grams of protein, maybe 250 calories, maybe a bit more. But just by adding those 2 extra scoops of the nut butter, we now have 430 calories and 16, I can't see, more protein.
16, yeah.
So without changing the volume when we're volume sensitive, those 2 extra tablespoons make a big difference.
Yeah, and that's really what it's about. It's about trying to make every bite you take or sip you drink count for as many calories and as much protein as possible. And these strategies, like Sarah was saying, they're not necessarily increasing the volume or the amount that you would normally drink, so you don't have to feel overwhelmed sitting down to a large meal, for example, but it's just boosting the calories and the protein per amount. And so moving on to our sort of second category of examples, which is the small eats, or what we've called small eats. And it really ties into the point that Sarah was talking about earlier with the Nutrition Foundation in terms of eating small, frequent meals. The first one we have here is taking something like a simple chocolate pudding. You can buy one, you can also make your own at home. And to that, adding we chose sliced almonds for some additional protein and calories, of course, and then we chose dried cranberries. You can switch this up with whatever type of nut and dried fruit that you like, but it's essentially taking the snack pack, which started at somewhere around 120 calories, and you're boosting it up to 350 calories, and you're adding a little bit of protein as well.
I always tell people no amount is insignificant, so even if it's just 2 extra mouthfuls, those calories are so important and so helpful.
The next example we have here is a non-dairy option. So we start out with something like a coconut ice cream. And to it, we're adding a coconut whipped cream. But what we're doing is we're taking hemp protein powder. So you'll see it's a little bit green in color. But that's okay, it's supposed to be green. So if you buy this and you open it up and you think, oh no, my protein powder, something's wrong with it, it's fine. And all you're doing is you're just gonna mix your 2 tablespoons of hemp protein powder into your whipped cream. It will discolor the whipped cream a bit, but it's not gonna change the flavor at all. And then you can top your ice cream with a high protein whipped cream.
So for this snack, it's about 400 calories and 11 grams of protein. And then the one we have on the end, the last one, is using something like little pitas, mini pitas, or maybe like a little slider bun. What you're gonna do is you're gonna take a can of, we used fish in this example, and we like the ones that are packed in oil, so it's a little bit of extra calories, but you could use any variety you wanted. And then to it, you're just gonna mix some avocado. You can do a half an avocado. If you want a little bit more, feel free to add more in. If you want to make it even softer, some people find that soft and liquid things, food items feel easier to digest and seem to sit a little bit better. If you wanted to, you could always add a little bit of something like some Miracle Whip or some mayonnaise. So once you mix that all up and you stuff it into your 2 little mini pitas, you have a small snack, a small eat that gives you 320 calories and 22 grams of protein. So just to go over some meal boosters. So we've given you some examples, but really the point of this is we want people when they don't have energy, if they have to cook for themselves, if they feel like sitting down to a regular meal just seems completely overwhelming and unappealing, whatever you are able to tolerate and whatever the item is that you're going to have, just think, okay, what can I add to this that's going to boost the calories, or what can I add to it that's going to add in some extra protein? So some extra calorie ideas would be things like the butter, the margarine, the vegetable oils. You can put those in soups, you can mix them into pastas. Something like a full fat yogurt, if you're having like a creamier soup, you could take like a high fat yogurt and plain and just mix that in. Using the nut butters was one of our examples. And then if you wanted even things like a jam or a honey, if you're having a muffin, a croissant, you could just spread some of that onto it.
And we've also got listed some additional ways that you can add extra protein to the meals and the snacks that you're having. So things like chicken or fish or lean meat, you can add these things to soups, stews, salads. Cheese can be melted over really anything you like. You can add eggs to things like soups, salads, even smoothies. You can get pasteurized eggs in the grocery store, liquid pasteurized eggs that you can add to your smoothies to boost the protein in the smoothies that you're making. And also tofu. You can take something like a soft tofu. You could even make a chocolate pudding out of a soft tofu. Add some melted chocolate with a little bit of vanilla, and you've got your own homemade easy chocolate pudding.
So I'm just going to go over some suggestions and tips if people feel as though they have a lot of gas and bloating. So obviously they're the common foods to avoid. So in terms of vegetables, things like your broccoli, your cauliflower, onions, garlic. In terms of fruits, for some people, apples and bananas and prunes. all of these suggestions are very individualized. So if something is on this list and you feel like, oh, I can eat that and that doesn't cause any discomfort for me, then definitely, you can continue to eat those things. Or if there's something not on a typical list, but you feel, oh, every time I eat this, I just don't feel well, then that's a good reason for you to avoid it, because everyone's nutrition needs, they're going to be individualized, and what works for one person won't necessarily work for the other person. So the legumes, so the beans, the lentils, kidney beans, those things can be gas producing. Anything that's deep fried, rich pastries, pies, sometimes gravies and sauces, things like that. Carbonated beverages, so like waters, pop, beer, things like that. Another big one is skipping meals. So when we're not eating regularly throughout the day, we can have some extra gas form, and that can be uncomfortable. And all of these things, the gas and the bloating, so that symptom can be a sign of pancreatic insufficiency, even if you're not having diarrhea or any of those other signs or symptoms of pancreatic insufficiency. So if you're not taking pancreatic enzymes, but you're having this gas and bloating, definitely talk to your team and just let them know your symptoms, because maybe it's appropriate for you to take them. So moving on to diarrhea, it's another one. So as we've kind of been alluding to, the diarrhea can be caused because of pancreatic insufficiency if our body's not absorbing those nutrients, the protein, the fat. But it can also be a side effect related to some of the treatments, depending if someone's receiving radiation, and depending on the area that's receiving the radiation, that can cause some diarrhea, as well as a side effect from the chemotherapies. So this might seem the opposite of what you think of as healthy eating, but just keep in mind everyone's nutrition goals are individualized, and even if we suggest, or if you speak to your dietitian and they suggest something that seems a little bit off from healthy balanced eating, that's okay, because that's appropriate for you or for that individual in that moment. So avoiding a lot of fiber, because that can be irritating. So things like certain fruits and vegetables, the legumes, fruits with seeds. Having less fat. I know this is kind of opposite again of what we were talking about, because we don't want to eliminate too much fat because it's a good source of calories, but maybe just the deep fried things, to be mindful of those things. Changing up your milk products, so you could try something like a lactose-free milk, or like a lactose-free yogurt. Having less caffeine, it can be stimulating on the bowel, so maybe try a decaffeinated product or maybe some herbal teas. And again, this can be that sign and symptom of pancreatic insufficiency. So if you're not taking enzymes, definitely speak to your healthcare team to see if it's appropriate for you to be taking some.
And of course, anytime you are having difficulties with eating or enjoying your meals, it's important that you ask to speak to a registered dietitian at your cancer facility. And also, as you were mentioning at the top of the presentation, there is a free tour that you can come to Loblaws and take. A couple Loblaws dietitians developed it with Toronto oncology dietitians to make sure that we're all saying the same messages. And it's different stations inside the grocery store to give you some hands-on examples and tips, just like we were doing here, of ways that you can incorporate some of the advice that you are probably hearing from your dietitians.
So that's everything we wanted to share today. Thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you.